evening.
Hello.
Good evening, Sean.
Hey,
good evening, Ash.
Hey guys.
Okay. Everybody well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Mustn't grumble.
Yeah, go ahead, grumble. Yeah, we're about to have nuclear apocalypse. So yeah, grumble.
Precisely.
Like,
Wear your mushrooms with pride, to use a very obscure pop culture reference.
Yes.
There you go.
True with pride.
Wear your mushroom with pride.
Right.
Whoops, Apocalypse, 1980s.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. So would that be the Mushroom Cloud?
Mushroom Cloud, yeah. They made a film out of it. It was originally a TV series on ITV, and it was really, really funny, and it was just all about an accidental start of nuclear war. And that's why the whole beginning of it is wear your mushrooms with pride. So there you go. Obscure cultural reference, done out the way. Because we try to look cultural and intelligent.
Absolutely. That's a big tick. Moving on.
Well, being cultural, you went to see John Cooper Clarke this week?
Yes, I did see John Cooper Clarke. Yeah, the Bard of Salford.
The Bard of Salford. The Bard of Bards, I think, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah. Oh, he was ace.
Yeah.
He was. His opener was great guy, Luke Wright. Really good. A similar style to John Cooper Clarke's, but he's younger. He's 40. And it was just more vibrant, and really good. I was really impressed with Luke Wright. And I was thinking, and then, of course, the Bard of Salford comes on and just blew us all away, Don't ever doubt him, because it's in there.
Yeah, I've seen him a couple of times, and the man just blows me away every time.
Yeah.
He just has such a natural style. And apparently Bernard Manning gave him his break on a stage. He was the first person to hire him, and apparently brought him on, and he just went, he's not my cup of tea, but you might like him. John Cooper Clarke. And I think what a great introduction you can have onto stage.
Yeah.
But properly came along and kicked down doors for poets, that man, without realising he was doing it.
Yeah, I think someone's one day came along and just smashed and grabbed his chest. His chest seems to have disappeared.
Did he do the one about being on heroin? Get back on the heroin?
No.
Oh, that was get back on the heroin, you fat fuck. That was the.
Oh yeah, no. There was a fat fuck thing. Yeah.
It's so funny.
Hi, Ash, all right. Are you okay, Ash?
Yeah. Just being quiet and being as jealous as anything that you guys have been to see John Cooper Clarke, and I never get out anywhere. I'm just
Get him booked. He's on tour at the moment.
Yeah.
In fact, the night after Leicester, which was 2 nights ago, last night he was in Manchester.
He'll be around. We'll keep an eye out for him, Ash, because we've got to go.
I'm going to have to. Yeah. He's too good to miss. Yeah.
That's it. And we've got to, because I've got a new poetry night starting in Blackpool as well, called Magical Word.
Oh yeah. You said that.
Yeah, which is great. It starts on the 9th of May as well. And there's a magician called Russ Brown. He's absolutely amazing. He's quite high up in the whole magic thing. He's one of the 3 organisers of the Blackpool Magic Convention, which is the worldwide magic convention, which is held in Blackpool every year. He's opened a little bar in Blackpool that does magic. So we're going to do a poetry night there. It's an open mic poetry night. And he's going to do some magic as well. So it's like 2 lots of entertainment, all for free, which is brilliant.
Magic poetry.
Yeah. That's called Magical Words. So that's starting soon. So that's 9th of May. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Love it.
So I know Ash is going to be there. You're going to be there, aren't you, Ash?
Definitely, yes.
I'll go around and drag you out of the house and drag you down there.
Definitely, I will. Yeah. Yeah, I can do a card trick. Yeah.
What about some poetry?
Oh yes.
I might do actually. I'm working on one at the moment, which it was part of a classroom exercise that I was doing with some students, and I just got the idea that I wanted to rewrite the lyrics to Hotel California, but about Blackpool Travelodge.
Love it. Love it already.
Nice.
So as soon as that one's sorted, I will send copies out to both of you.
Oh, I love it.
That's great.
You get some great ideas.
On the subject of things that we love, what do we think to Algernon Blackwood?
Well, first of all, we've Algernon Blackwood. But first of all, what we need to do is, Ash, you need to tell us what we read this week. You're not getting out of the synopsis.
The Wood of the Dead, published in 1906. A man travelling through a town encounters a mysterious older gentleman who speaks lyrically of the area. To a place he calls the Wood of the Dead later that night, and he will teach him something of his purpose for being there. This older man, who has an aura of secret knowledge about him, vanishes when the traveller isn't looking. When he asks the innkeeper's daughter about the mysterious man and his Wood of the Dead, she tells him the strange history attached to both. The ghost, she explains, was a generous man known as the father of the village. He acquired some money following the death of a son, and he used it philanthropically to help the village prosper. But he went a little bit mental. He started talking to people who weren't there. He called the bunch of pine trees at the end of the village the Wood of the Dead, because he claimed that just before anyone died in the village, he saw them walk into that wood singing. None who went in ever came out again. That night, the traveller goes to the Wood of the Dead, as requested by the ghost, and he pervs on a couple who are clearly out there doing a bit of dogging. Female member of the couple disappears into the trees with a man who looks like the ghost, and at the last minute the traveller recognises her as the innkeeper's daughter. On his next visit to the inn, he learns that the daughter died that night due to heavy dogging. Is that the one that you read?
Close.
That was better than the one I read. Dogging for Britain.
Yeah. Doggers of the Dead, yeah.
Don't put titles in my head. You know how I go off and write stories, Ash?
Yeah, that one would work, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Didn't they have a saying in the Second World War, digging for Britain?
Yes, that was to do with the potato farming, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. But I just thought, it's only a syllable.
It's only a syllable, and if you're draining somebody's potatoes one way, in that case, you can.
All I know is
there's
the
more
car
than
ends
one
up
way.
looking like a plasterer's radio. That's all I'll say.
More than one way to skin a potato.
For anybody who's been serious about this, there wasn't really any dogging in there. I think the couple were just canoodling. Would be a couple of just canoodling, but I was being my usual frivolous and disingenuous self. It's great. But yeah, was that roughly the plot that we'd read? Bloke sitting
Absolutely.
in there?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. And well done.
Thank you. Yeah. I was kind of chuffed with that one. That was suggested by Sean Hawker that we have a look at that. What did you think, guys? What do you think to Algernon Blackwood?
Sean, you go first on this one.
Yeah, Sean, you're sucking a lemon on this one at the moment. I can sort of see that. Yeah. Well,
no, it's when I read these pieces, or actually it was an audio book that I listened to. I go in open-minded, and I really liked the language that Algernon was using. I loved the way that he evokes the pictures for the mind, and he really did evoke pictures. I thought his description was really good.
Yeah.
Description great. You could kind of see how it was going to unfold. I don't think I ever thought there was going to be a big twist in there, and there really wasn't. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed just jumping on the train and just enjoying the ride all the way through. Really enjoyed it, and the guy in the window sounded ethereal, ethereally enough for you to think it was probably a ghost. And I thought it was as much as it was a horror story, it was a lovely story too.
Yeah.
It was a little bit nearly on a fable kind of tone.
I get what you're saying with that. Colin, what are your thoughts? Did you enjoy this one?
I'm going to say I'm very similar with where Sean's coming from on this a bit, to be honest with you, in the way that last week's Screaming Skull was, I thought, a really good story, but not in the hands of the best possible writer. I thought this one was an absolutely brilliant writer with not a very good story.
Yeah.
And that's because I thought I'm going to describe it as purpling. And for those that are not aware of that, that's where you overflower language to an extent. It's quite often done by bad poets. Usually, you kind of purple up everything to make it sound more verbose. I'm not commenting, but yeah, but here it really worked because I thought the way he used the language really gave you the character of the traveller. And you really got this sense of that's how he was talking and how he was speaking. It's just that the actual ghost story itself was really not that interesting. And that's, if it wasn't for the fact that he was writing it so well, it would have been really just dull. I mean, it was a classic woman in black type story, wasn't it? It was a grey lady. It was the harbinger of doom type story that goes on.
Mm.
But didn't really capture. I like what you say about the fable. Being again underpinned by folk stories, in that way. But I thought if you go back to H.P. Lovecraft with the Dunwich Horror, the trees were definitely more scary in that, which has a similar type idea. And in the Screaming Skull, the idea of this thing, that gnaws people to death was more interesting than it's Captain Birdseye sat in a window who manages to and they all go walking off into the woods. It was just one of those kind of, the story just wasn't interesting, but I was captivated by the language he used. I just couldn't, every time I was thinking it's dull. It wasn't dull listening to him, listening to those words, because I did it as an audio on this one because I was just running around the place. His words were captivating, absolutely captivating.
It was very evocative language, and I really enjoyed it for that, I didn't know what to think, but that's where it took me anyway. And fables do unfold in that kind of way, really, don't they? But obviously, fables will have some kind of lesson at the end. The lesson here is don't go dogging in the woods.
Well, actually, I wasn't quite certain. I got the impression that what he was seeing walk into the woods wasn't the person was the person after death. Effectively, wasn't it? You were watching the spirit walk off. So that's the way I saw it. So basically, the woods is the gates through to the other side. Effectively, after someone. Yeah,
but then the guy went in there, and his wife woke the next day, and he was back in bed, but he was dead.
Yeah.
So you do come out of the woods again.
Well, I suppose was he using it as that thing of he's not out of the woods yet? Yeah. Is that where that comes from? Is it? But yeah, I don't know. It just, I got swept up in the language. There are moments I cannot remember what the story was doing because I got swept up in this flow of the language. Yeah.
It was really ethereal the way that he wrote. I really liked it.
I'm going to say it's a little bit like Peaky Blinders for me, and I love Peaky Blinders. Watched it all the way through to the end. But really, it's not a very good story, but it has the most wonderful cinematography and fantastic soundtrack.
Can't stand it.
Well, it's just a music video. That's all you do. You just watch it for the music video. Don't follow the story because the story is absolutely rubbish. And that's what I saw here. It was like a painting that didn't really go anywhere, but it was just really beautifully put together.
I'm with Sean on the Peaky Blinders thing. I think I sat through half an episode and then thought, why am I wasting my time? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I'm an actor, and I'm not hopefully coming across as I don't like the acting on there. It's just the way it's directed and produced. It's just so American. It's shit.
But I really enjoyed Peaky Blinders for the fact that that's what it is. Exactly the reason you hate it. It's the artistry of Peaky Blinders that I like. And the fact that the reason I bought into it is because I love PJ Harvey and I like Nick Cave. And it was basically the first series was PJ Harvey singing Nick Cave and Radiohead songs. So it was kind of like a given for me to, just sit here and watch this go on at the minute. It's quite, I couldn't tell you what was going on in the story at all. Yeah. And that's what I mean here. It's the same sort of thing for me. It was like the story makes no sense sometimes. This one, the story made a bit more sense. It's just uninteresting.
Sean, I want to go back to something. Yeah, Sean, you said about things being too American. So where do you stand? Really important question that's got fuck all to do with what we're discussing. But Breaking Bad.
Never seen it.
Interesting. Yeah. If you do get a chance to have a look at some of it, I would really be interested to what you think about it. It's
okay. Okay, good. Well, that's a reason to watch it. I don't watch much TV. I've just lost all faith in TV, really, to be fair. I've just been listening to Chet Baker, much better.
Yeah. Not like a bit of jazz, is there? Yeah, right. Yeah, so yeah. If you do get a chance to ever have a look at an episode, I would love to get your thoughts.
Yeah. I will do that, definitely.
Yeah,
but it's just the American. It's just the bloody Americanness of the way it's all going. You know, I mean, I can't stand the British TV, but it's just everything just seems to be a pastiche of itself, and no one's really real, and if I watch something, it'll have to be something European, and I can watch the relationship. It's all about this, and I just love all that. But English and American TV, it's toilet TV for me.
Brilliant. Right. So before we start getting hate mail,
because I defend a lot of it. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I agree with you a lot of modern stuff. But no, I'm going to defend. I've been watching BritBox a lot recently, so I've done all the Only Fools and Horses. I'm watching Steptoe and Sons. I'm currently watching the Beiderbecke Affair. I've decided to do that. I'm watching Beiderbecke Affair and Cracker at the same time.
Well, there you go. They were class.
Yeah, and they are class pieces of writing. And I agree with you. There are certain modernisms that are going on in a lot of things, and I blame Marvel a lot for it. The Marvel movies, in a way, because people went to the cinema in droves on those, and producers seem to think that's what people like, so they go for fast edits and all that kind of stuff. I think there's room for things being kind of arty and
more arty, please, more arty,
sort of thing. But Cracker isn't arty at all. Cracker is just gritty.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. But it was well produced, it was well written, it was well directed, and it was well acted. You can't go wrong. Yeah. But if you get the production and the direction wrong, it's not the actor's fault, and it's not the lighting man's fault. It's not the cameraman's fault. It's where these two people feel it should go. That's where the problem is.
And I think with Cracker, it was gritty, but I think also they'd taken grittiness into an art form with it as well. The whole idea of just sort of like exploiting the psychological aspect of things in such a frank and straightforward way. Yeah, it was just new. And it
was groundbreaking. Yeah, it was groundbreaking. Like Breaking Bad. This is the strange thing about Breaking Bad, which will be interesting to see what you say about it, Sean, when you watch it.
Yeah.
When it first came out, it was groundbreaking. Absolutely groundbreaking. Now you get more people watching it that aren't as enamored by it because it's not groundbreaking anymore. It was the one that spawned. Funny enough, I watched it on Netflix at the moment. The Spark Brothers is on, which is a documentary about Sparks. Amazing band when you look into what they did. And there was amazing. Edgar Wright's directed it. It's a really good documentary.
Okay.
And that talks about how things do that. So Sparks, 1973, This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us, blew the socks off everybody, absolutely changed things. Then they didn't do very well commercially because other things happened. And then they brought out Number One Song in Heaven, which was like the first synthesizer album, which like Pet Shop Boys, Erasure, Soft Cell have all come off the back of. And then when Sparks came back in 2000, everyone accused them of copying the 80s style, which was actually inspired by them from the 1970s. Yeah. So they kind of became almost meta in a way, in doing, being after the stuff that they inspired.
Well, they're the one with the Hitler mustache.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were just amazing. They just didn't care about commercial success. They just did what they did.
I bet they did, really.
Well, they did. It's not as successful as they wanted it to be, but they didn't change to match the commercial ideas. They were creative, and every so often, their creativity was commercial enough to sell. That just happens to be where it lined up with them rather than the other way around.
Oh yeah, there's a few bands like that. I know a few bands. I know Ian McNabb from the Icicle Works, and he was exactly the same. He had to create some hits. So he did, and they all did very well for themselves. But really, underneath, he wasn't really a hits man, and it wasn't really a hits band. It was real, independent, cool music. But you've got to make a coin, haven't you?
Well, that's the thing is, and like I say, that was the interesting thing about Sparks is they never went out for the hits. They had hits, but they didn't. They made what they thought was great, and it was, and sometimes it wasn't. And they went, oh, all right then. And then they just went off and, oh, right, we want to do a disco album now, or we want to do, they just 25 albums, nearly 800 songs. They just keep doing it.
I'll watch a bit of that.
Yeah, it's well worth it. Anyway,
bring us back to Algernon Blackwood, because, Colin, you'd said something before about the idea that the wood of the dead, is a gateway to heaven. And I can sort of see that, because if you look at the story linguistically, we've got none of the main characters have got names. Everybody's an unnamed character, from the innkeeper's daughter to the traveller. The only person who's got a name, the altruistic ghost, was known as the father of the village. And you might be stretching a bit to think, oh, father, he's like a godlike figure, but his wife's called Mary. So again, we're sort of getting all these religious...
And he had a beard.
Say again?
He had a beard, didn't he? He was a bit beardy. Yeah. So
we're getting all of these religious things. So I think, you're definitely picking up on something with the whole idea that we've got... and
the philanthropy as well.
Say that again, Sean, you broke up.
And it's a word that I always struggle with. And the philanthropy as well.
Yes. Philanthropy. Yeah, I've got a list of tongue twisters that I give to students before they do presentations, and philanthropy is in there every time. Yeah,
I'm not even going to attempt it.
Yeah. But yes, I can see what you're saying about the religious connotations and the Jesus connotation.
Yeah, but the whole idea that he's done this, and he's created an entire story which. I listened to it on audiobook, and I wasn't getting much inspiration through listening to the audiobook version. So I read it, and I think reading it worked a lot better for me than doing the audiobook. But we've got this entire story where the main characters are unnamed. And it lacks intimacy, yet still it's a powerful story. An awful lot of people would sort of create a story, and we need to have the character names so that we actually know who it is that we're sort of cheering for or booing against. But with this one, we're just left with the anonymity of, it's an innkeeper's daughter, it's the ghost, it's the traveller, it's the father of the village.
Quite interesting that you say that, actually, Ash, because one of the criticisms, or the main criticism that annoyed us and riled us somewhat about Charles Dickens' The Signalman, was how impersonal it was. By not naming the signalman and the way that it came out, it felt really lazy. But here, and I think, again, what Sean was saying at the beginning, I think it's the language. I understand why it makes more sense reading it, because it's the language that is used that pulls this story along. It's not the characterizations, I don't think. I don't think it's the personalities. You are taken on this ride through this linguistic woodland. That's that's what you're doing, and so it's the reason that the interpersonal, the lack of interpersonal personality within the story itself doesn't actually grate as much is because you are in with all the other stuff. You're in with all the description and the way he describes it's just emotional. He's describing his emotions of the moment and what he's seeing so well.
So I think actually we can round the conversation off. We did digress somewhat and went to American TV. No, we did. But we can round the story here, because I was talking about European films and how much I love all this, and that was that for me. Now thinking about it, now you just so eloquently put it in that way, is that the description was very much like a European film. I didn't need to know the names because they were described so well. Yeah. That I just didn't need to know the names. I wasn't wanting to know anybody's name, because it was all. I did feel that we were quite close to these people, and because of that description. Whereas if it was more written in a European style, i.e., American English style, maybe they wouldn't have gone in so much. Maybe a modern writer wouldn't have brought that through.
I get what you're saying there, and I get what you're saying about the European stuff as well. One of the things that I love listening to are operas, and especially Italian and French operas.
God.
Partly because I can't speak any Italian or any French. So you're just basically picking up on the emotion that's being carried through the music and the acting and the expression. When you actually do get to find out what it is that they're saying, sometimes it sounds so fucking wanky that you're there thinking, that's absolutely ridiculous. Like in La Boheme, where he's sort of like singing Que Jolie de Menina, it's a gorgeous song. The fact that he's saying your little hand's cold, yeah, that's pretty shit. There's one part where he says to Rodolfo things to Mimi, saying that it's a beautiful aria that he starts singing. And then you find out the lyrics are, my heart's just been stolen by the thief that is your beautiful eyes. And you think, oh, fuck off. That's not even made in Chelsea level of garbage.
You wouldn't buy the card, would you? You wouldn't, if you read that you'd like that. No, that one's going back.
Yeah.
But it was like 200 years ago.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is that when it's actually sung in a foreign language, so you're just getting the expression of that emotion.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Sensation. Then it is absolutely brilliant. And even when you like read the subtitles on the screen, you can think, well, go on, I'm gonna have a little cry whilst I'm sort of like watching this bit. There's nobody else in the fucking room with me.
it's great when you. What you're saying there is utterly brilliant, because that's with Radiohead when they brought out Kid A. And that's what Tom York was saying. They had a big success with OK Computer, and he wanted to write something where the words really didn't mean anything. He just wanted the voice to be an instrument. So all the lyrics on Kid A are actually designed around making the vocals emotional rather than trying to have a new form of message.
Right.
And it works. It works really well. They wrote it as an instrument.
That's a different subject, Sam. There are a few bands out there who have just thrown lines into a hat and pulled them out and used them.
David Bowie way of writing, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. A few bands like that. But that's a different subject.
Yeah, completely. But yeah,
that's not what this guy's done. This guy hasn't just put a load of random words in and pulled them out. I mean, there's a mastery in what he's doing.
But Sean, you're right. It's got a very European. It's got a European feel to it, but also it's going to be very, very firmly placed in a rural, almost a Haywain type painting. Who the hell did the Haywain?
I got a Constable.
John Constable.
Thank you. Yeah. It's almost like Constable setting for the whole story.
Do you know what I got? Do you know the image I got out of it was Twin Peaks?
All right.
It had this. I thought it had this kind of atmosphere about it that had that kind of like you were going into a village of people that never left the village. And it wasn't like, and it was nice because they weren't weird and they weren't scary in that way, but you were walking into there. He was there eating in the diner, having, and just walking through and passing through their life without them really interfering with his. That's
with no cherry pie and coffee, but
the log knew.
I do see what you're saying there. Yeah, it makes complete sense what you're saying. I didn't see it that way. And I was a big lover of Twin Peaks. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, there were no midgets talking backwards, but
no, but because of the way he uses the language, and it goes back to what you were saying about that fable type feeling. It had a dreamlike state.
Yes,
about the whole thing.
Yeah, it did. It did. He would have been. He should have. I don't know where his career went afterwards or before, but it was Dickens-like the way that he was describing the story. Very Dickens-like.
Yeah. No, he's fairly well celebrated, but I think only in sort of like literature circles, and which is a shame, really. More people know about Dickens, and this is not me pissing on Dickens. Dickens wrote some very good stuff, but Dickens is overrated. I mean, Christmas Carol. I love Christmas Carol. I don't think you can get a better Christmas story than Christmas Carol. But an awful lot of this stuff is just wordy, and it's just a case of too much for me, too much for my delicate and simple tastes. Anyway.
Yeah, Great Expectations was a good story, but it was wordy.
Yeah.
No, it was. He could have done it in 2/3 of the time.
Yeah, I get the impression he was getting paid by the word with a lot of that stuff. Just,
he was doing it as serials.
Yes, he was.
So they had to, you have to have a lot more filler when you're doing it that way. It's just one of those things, He was the Coronation Street of his day, really. Yeah.
Well, he was, but then you do see BBC. I hate BBC adaptations, and they're so wanky. But hey, but they did one of Great Expectations, and of course, it was in 2/3 of the time, and it still wasn't quite as good as the long version.
I think, but the thing is, that's the thing, isn't it, with Dickens? I think he was like the great pop star, isn't he? And you can do this with David Bowie. I love David Bowie. He was I hero worship the guy through certain periods of his music. But a lot of what he was doing, he was like the big known million seller all over the place, but he actually had a knack of finding stuff that was underground and bringing it overground. And Madonna does the same thing. She was finding music movements that are going on underground and bringing them to the fore for other people. And I felt Dickens was a bit like that of his time. He wasn't going off finding, he's not stealing it off anyone else, but he was like the big pop star that everybody knew and everyone fell off docks for. And, there were other writers underneath that were doing arguably better work, but just weren't making it in the limelight and weren't becoming as famous. Yeah,
but I mean, I guess, that's just human nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's always going to be one that we choose, and there's going to be loads underneath that are probably better.
Yeah.
I'm still amused, Sean, by the fact that you were hoping for something better for an adaptation that's called Great Expectations. The levels that are going on.
No, I wasn't saying that. It's my favourite Dickens book. So,
no, I mean in the TV adaptation that you were hoping for something better.
I was.
I like the idea. Yeah. It's actually called Great Letdowns.
Well, it was a bit for me, yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think if it's a favourite book, in that case, any adaptation of it is going to be shite, because whatever you've created in your head is never going to live up to that, is it?
Which is what we said about the Christmas Carol, wasn't it? We said the thing about the Christmas Carol, what makes it such an almost perfect story is that it doesn't matter how you adapt it, it still works. You can change it, you can make it modern, you can put it in any setting, but you keep the core elements of that story and it works. And that's the greatness of that particular story. It just works so well, and you recognize it immediately as saying that's a Christmas Carol story. You just know what it is. Like this one here, Muppets is still the best version of the Christmas Carol. There's no doubt about it. And Scrooged with Bill Murray, brilliant version of the Christmas Carol.
But then they start messing around with Shakespeare and the National Theatre bring it all up to date, and I don't get on with it.
I don't know. I thought Forbidden Planet was brilliant, and that's in the modern adaptation of Shakespeare. So it's
go on, do that again. Yeah.
So
why is Forbidden Planet Tempest?
Yeah.
All right.
That's so. It's
not going to be Tempest. Yeah.
Not going to be Romeo and Juliet, is it?
I don't actually think I've seen Forbidden Planet. I thought it was a shop, but yeah.
It's a classic 1950s sci-fi. It was actually the most expensive film ever made when it came out.
Yeah, I've heard of it, just not seen it.
It's got Leslie Nielsen in it, being a serious actor rather than the comedy actor that we knew him as later on. So it's Robbie the Robot comes from it as well. You watch it now, yes, it's 1950s sci-fi. The robot's actually got valves in it and stuff like that. But it still works for me, and part of that is because it's actually built on a very, very good story. So sometimes when they take those adaptations, look public domain, you can find some good stories. But I'm going to go back to this one a second. What do you think? Do you think you could see a TV adaptation of this? Do you think you could visualize it in such a way that it would make an interesting thing to watch?
I could see it, but it'll never, ever, ever get made.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sean. I think it's got the potential there, but it just doesn't have sort of like the woof impact that's sort of like going to make people stay to the end and then go, oh, I'm going to have to tell people about this one because it was brilliant. We all know within the first 5 minutes, Harbinger of Doom, either the narrator's going to die or somebody who's also in the room is going to die. And there were no surprises there at all, were there?
Yeah, well, if there was Duggan in it, it would be on ITV in a flash.
Yeah.
Or Channel 5, at least.
No, ITV.
Yeah, I could. If they brought in the dogging version of it, and we had sort of like a dogging park that was a gateway to heaven. Now that is an adaptation that, yeah.
All doggers go to heaven. That's a different film.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because at Christmas there was the TV adaptation of The Mezzotint, which is old Mr. James, right?
Yeah.
And we said at the time when we discussed The Mezzotint that the ending was a bit shit and a bit sudden, and they changed the ending for the adaptation. So there would be my next question is, can you think of how you would, is it the ending that you would need to change in this to make it a more interesting TV thing? Because I agree with you. I think if you made it as is, it would just end up being, and I also agree with you, Sean, it would end up being quite European. It would need the word Finn at the end of it, that kind of thing.
I think a European director and a European production could make it, and it would be ace. They could even make an updated version of it, and it would still be as really good. But I don't think the British people and the American producers, they just don't get all that stuff.
Do you know what I would do with this one too? If I was putting this on telly, or writing it as a script, or bringing it into the 21st century, I think I would stick a dead cat bounce on this. So it's exactly the same story that we've got. He goes right to the end. He goes into the inn and sort of like says to the landlord, "How's your daughter?" "Oh, she's dead." Very, very sad. And then fucks off into the room where he's where he had the meal before and met the ghost. And the ghost sort of like there, matey, and we sort of like cut there. And that way you sort of like got the threat of death hanging over him, which gives it a little bit more immediacy and a little bit more pressure on the story that, you've not seen all of it yet. I think that would have given it a little bit more impact. Or is that just me liking dead?
No, I think you're right. Well, let's take the 21st century out of it. That's where the story should have gone.
Yeah.
We would have had a much more interesting conversation about that.
Yeah, we would have been sort of like wondering what the chuff happened. Did he sort of like take him up on it? Did he sort of like think, let's go down to the... Yeah.
Because, there was language of where the man in the window would then, once the story is unfolding and the guy's becoming a little bit more shaky at what he's hearing from his new unnamed friend, that the unnamed guy with the beard really gives him a really sharp look as he's talking about the subject of the book. And I was thinking, well, if he's giving him a real sharp look, he's on his list. He's here for him. And I thought the writer was leading us up a little bit of a red herring path there. That should come to fruition, shouldn't it, at some point?
Yeah, and I think, we did need to sort of like see somebody that we cared about. Not that I didn't care about the innkeeper's daughter, but she was just sort of like a tertiary character who was there to sort of like give a little bit of backstory and, just to be not as pretty as the women he'd been fantasizing about.
Well, the cleavage.
Yeah. You looked at the illustrated version as well. Yeah, that was... I had a good hard look at that.
So we're going to do a Hammer version of this. Is that what we're doing? We're going to all the women have to be Hammer versions of women, Hammer horror movies.
Oh, that's what I've actually been going through at the moment. You were sort of like saying what we're watching. I've downloaded the Amicus anthology films, and I've been watching those. So Tales of Terror, Vault of Terror, possibly. All of those, Asylum, and having so much fun with them. They are amazing, aren't they? See, that's one of the things I will go back to this story with and say, actually, you know what? It would be a brilliant... It's almost like the Monster Club. Yeah. With Vincent Price. And there's one of those in the middle of that with the ghouls where he goes into a village, but he's got to drive through the fog to get into the village. And then he's trying to escape back out through the fog again because they wouldn't let him out. And there's a little bit of that kind of feeling about it, of this, like a forgotten village. But the story itself would make a great part of an anthology of tales. One of those. It should have there's no moral at the end of this story. I think that's
The whole, like you say about going back to a fable, everything about it is set up as a fable, but there's no moral at the end of it.
No, there isn't. Or there's no twist where he comes back and gets the guy.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit of an insipid, really, at the end, considering the class of the language he was using.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he'd wimped out somewhere along the line, hadn't he?
But we had the same argument with M.R. James. He kind of wimps out at his endings a little bit as well, even though the actual stories are great and well described and the tension is built beautifully.
Yeah, it's like they get bored at the end.
Or they just can't figure it out. Well, they just can't figure out where they're going with it. They didn't have an ending to it, that we all can see the ending. And I think I'm beginning to believe that more and more, that sometimes writers sit down to write something that they haven't considered the end of, and they kind of get them because they're so close to it, and because they're not reading it in one sitting, they're missing the little clues that they've kind of accidentally set up. They're not always purposefully set up, and they just miss what they're doing. And the readers are reading it, getting dead excited because of all this stuff in there, and the writer doesn't deliver on it because they didn't know they didn't know that that's what they'd set up.
I don't agree. I think you're not a writer until you can do a beginning, a middle, and an end. Why would you follow the passage of life of being a writer if you couldn't do that? I think
you are creating an end. It's just not the end that people are expecting from what you've written. I'm going to go to Stephen King here, because Stephen King is one of the great. He is an amazing writer, but quite often his endings are so anticlimactic to what has gone on before them.
Yeah, but where can it go after?
That's what I mean. It's sometimes that is what an ending is, isn't it? An ending is sometimes just really anticlimactic, but because you're reading it in one hit, you're kind of following it along. Your brain is running at a different rate. When you're writing a novel, by the time you actually get to the end you might have written an end and then it might have changed before you get there. But Ash is really sort of like prolific when he's writing things. But that latest one that you've written, how long's it taken you? And it's an Ebola size, isn't it?
Yeah, it's taken me 3 months, and the annoying thing with that one is I wrote a chapter, and I thought this is the opening chapter for it, and gave it to my wife, and she went, yeah, which is not the most encouraging thing that you want to hear. This first chapter that I've written has actually ended up being the penultimate chapter in the story, because it's sort of like it needed to build to that. So I've gone back, and that chapter, it takes place during World War One, and the story now starts this year, and then we sort of like keep getting flashbacks to things that happened in 2000, then things that happened in the 80s, and then things that happened in the 60s, and then, so it's been very sporadic in the way that I've written it. It's meant that for my usual, because I've thrown myself into research, I've done an awful lot of research on World War One for just one single fucking chapter. And then I kept dreading going into World War Two because I needed it to happen on Friday, November the 13th of 1941, which was the day that Buckingham Palace got hit by Messerschmitt bombing during the Blitzkrieg. Which, incredibly specific. And it meant an awful lot of research into that area as well. But this one, I realised, and this is what you were saying, Sean, it needed the beginning, middle and end, and that part needed to be closer to the end than it was at the beginning. I needed to do all that exposition and introducing characters, and we needed to have an idea where the story was going, and then build through the middle.
I can't. I can see the weight that it has on you just to talk about it. I would love to feel that I could sit down and write and come up with it, but oh my God, there must be so much weight on you when you decide to actually go for it. And talking in research terms, research is shit now on the internet. It's just a pastiche of what it used to be.
Yeah, it is.
So I mean, wouldn't it be funny if you had to go right back full circle and go to the what's it called? The Central Records Library or something.
Still do. You listen to Violet Fenn, who's a friend of ours. She writes historical books, and she goes off to the library. She goes off to the British Library to go look things up rather than on the net.
There's a Central Records Library, isn't there, or something?
Yeah, there should be one to each geographical area. So Preston's the local one for Europe. And
so for realists, for writers in the real world, the internet's no help whatsoever at the moment, is it?
It's a starting point, to be honest. I mean, things like Wikipedia, which is like 99% wrong, but they usually have really nice links to other books and other things that are existent. So you can go and find, it's the starting point of your rabbit hole and where you go with that rabbit hole. And I think the problem is people don't like doing research, because research is just laborious sometimes. And I joke about the fact, I always joke that I don't do research, which isn't true, because you've got to find those details.
Yeah, and it has all that attached to it.
Yeah.
But when you actually sit down and write with that research in here,
yes,
what a lovely moment.
It is. It's something that I absolutely adore. That's why one of the reasons we started this podcast was to look at the writing process in a way and look at stories like this and go, where did he start with it? I mean, this, with this particular piece, at what point was his spark for this? And again, I often go back to test pieces. A lot of short stories feel like test pieces, and this one, it felt like an exercise of exposition in terms of the way that he was describing it. He was almost testing his abilities to be able to describe everything, and the story was second to everything else that went on around it. It was just one of those things that seemed to flow around everything else.
Yeah, it seemed to me a little bit like a report that had to go into the Daily Express, but they brought some guy in from, a real big, a real big journalist, and it's just well beneath it.
Yeah, well, it's just something going. He's been sent out on. Look, we've got reports of this ghost going on at the Pine Village. Go and have a look at that, will you?
In fact, that would be a great idea, wouldn't it?
It's almost like a paranormal version of Gonzo journalism, isn't it?
A completely overqualified journalist has to do a shit story.
Yes,
probably happens on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what you get a lot of these. And I talk to Ash about it quite often when we're in class, because I've been writing a long time, and other people in the class are not as experienced in the writing game, that but we're all learning at the same level. And you sort of talk about the idea of just sitting down and writing something for no purpose. So you might sit down and write a scene that has a character in it just to see how that character plays out. So it might be the opening scene that he wrote. He just wrote it to have this mysterious character with no real idea of what that character was, just to create the scene around it. And then from there, he's kind of bolted together the story and how it kind of works off the back of it from other things that he's heard and picked up around the place. It wouldn't surprise me if I got in a time machine and went back and asked him and found out that's what he'd done, because it has that kind of feel about it.
Yeah, like my latest John Cooper Clarke poem, exactly the same.
Just try it, just to see what it does. Yeah,
try it. Just throw someone into it and see where it goes.
I think everybody that goes to see John Cooper Clarke usually comes out and tries to write their own version of twat. I think is always a good one, isn't it? Yes. It's just because it's so inspiring and it's so like, oh my God, I didn't think you could write like that.
Yeah,
I'm going to have a go at writing like that to see what happens.
I'm not on a university course, so it's I go and see something and I think, what, I'm inspired, I'll do something.
Yeah, I wasn't always on a university course. I've been doing this for years, and then suddenly decided to do the university course because I couldn't get jobs in writing without the university course.
Yeah, I see. Right.
Yeah. So that's why. That's how I've known Ash all these years. I mean, he's been teaching this university course, and I've been sat there talking to him about English for years before I've even started on this course.
Yeah, so no doubt he mentioned to you quite a long time ago that you need to go to university.
On a number of occasions, he actually did state this to me, and I finally gave in.
Yeah, good.
But I'm sure my own history with academic stuff is that I didn't do my degree until I was in my 40s, and then once I got the degree, I came out with a first, so thought, I'll go and get a PhD as well. So Yeah, it's all been relatively recent. Before that, I was sort of like writing a long time before. I think probably from about 2000s, maybe even 1990s. I was writing and publishing stuff. But yeah, went in that way as sort of like a jobbing writer before I actually started looking at the academic side of stuff.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference now is that I'll write a script now, and where I'd write a script and work on the dialogue and try and tune it and tighten it up to make it as realistic as possible, I now actually know whether or not I'm breaking Grice's maxims of conversational rules. That's the difference. I now have that level of understanding on top of it.
Yeah. So if I was to start, I would be in exactly the same position you were in.
Yeah, and you'll be writing absolutely brilliantly. And then you come along and say, oh, by the way, this is what Grice's maxims do. And you'll look at your work and go, oh, my God, that's what I've been doing, rather than the other way around.
Yeah. I mean, in my family, my grandfather, luckily, I take after my grandparents, and they taught me a lot in my life. But my grandfather was writing. All I remember him doing in my teens, early teens through to being 20-something when he died, was sat there in his office writing fiction and sending it away, send away. Never ever was taken up. And I'm guessing that my interest in writing is coming through curiosity and own interest, but clearly there's something going on there as well. It's funny how life goes, isn't it?
You're an artist, Sean. You are an artist. I've seen your paintings. I've seen your cookery. You're a creative person, and you love words. And it doesn't matter what you turn those creative juices to. You know, we all get. I mean, I will always sit there and say, you never stop learning. Every single thing I write is usually better than the previous. You know.
Yeah. But maybe I got a little bit too personal there. But really, we all have. What I'm trying to say is, we all have our own reasons.
Yes. Yeah.
And 10 people, 10 different reasons.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. and it's something I will always encourage. If anyone actually tells me they enjoy writing, I'm straight on it. Write more, write every day. You know, I'm so encouraging of people doing that, and that's why, you know, we'll talk about things like this, this story here, and I'm all in favour of it. Just sit down and, you know, if you look at that and you go, oh, I love the language, then have a go at doing it. You know, just have a go at writing in that style.
Yeah. It was a lovely style. It just makes you smile, doesn't it? The fact that somebody could be so, you know, whatever you descriptive, ethereal, whatever word you want to put to it.
Yeah, it's something that I really adore in language. Sometimes I like simplicity, but what I loved is it didn't really go pompous with the words either. That was really the clever part of it. He went beautiful with his descriptions, but he wasn't trying to use just the most intelligent words to talk down to the reader. At no point did I feel patronized by what he was saying. It just flowed and was beautiful, and used 8 words instead of 1, which was just great. And I love that. And I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah. And I guess, Ash, you will have some students that you would need to teach to use less words quite often.
I've actually just I've sent you a book, Sean. It's a copy of How to Write Short Stories. It's something I wrote a few years back, but it might be of interest to you. And you do get students. Somebody was talking about this earlier on Facebook, sort of like saying, when you edit, do you end up adding more words or taking words out? And I suppose we're all different in the way that we approach things. So, you're going to get some students who are loquacious and verbose and need to trim the fuck back with stuff. And you've got some students who sort of like said, the cat sat on the mat, and you're thinking, come on, this is your dissertation.
Out of the pub.
Yes. I actually remember talking to one of my PhD supervisors, and they were sort of like saying, what can you do a PhD on? And one of them had said, well, technically, you could write a haiku and then write a PhD about that one. But the reality is, if you do that, you're taking the piss. One haiku and an entire thesis on it.
Write 70,000 words on one haiku.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's possible, but also it would be fucking boring to read.
Yes.
So yeah, and yeah, I think personally I end up overwriting stuff. I always have done, and it's just because I like the sound of my own voice too much.
No, but there does come a point where you've got to make that decision of, have I overdone it? And then it's, you know, trimming back is easy to a certain extent. It's if you were in a university situation and your tutor said, "Listen, I'm getting it, but it ain't coming through loud and clear," and then you've got to go away and find a load of.
Well, that's academic. That's where I've learned, because I've come from a fiction background. So I've gone into this university, you know, this academic journey. And I sort of write my first essay, and the first one I wrote was for Laura, who's actually Dr. Watson, and I love the fact she's called Dr. Watson. And it came back, and all that was written of it was, this is a colloquialism, this is a colloquialism, this is a colloquialism. And so I send it off to my friends, and everyone's going, it's really easy to read what I'm writing, but it's not academic. And so there is an academic style, which that's what I've had to work so hard on, is to get to the level where I'm writing stuff that looks like it's academic, and it's for those kind of people. And I've really had to push myself to do it. And I'm getting close. I don't think I'm completely there yet, but I think I'm getting very close.
That was one of the things that I loved doing with my PhD, the fact that it's based around 7 pieces of fiction that I've written, but also I tried to make the academic writing as accessible as possible as well, just because if you're trying to talk about creative writing and the importance and the use and the way of creative writing, it should also be something that's readable as well. Otherwise, you're not particularly good at expressing yourself as a creative writer. So yeah, I tried to make it so that even though it does fall into an awful lot of technical language about writing, I've tried to make it so that it's readable all the way, which is, I think it does come across that way as well. I think there are parts, most of it fairly readable. Yeah,
because in the early parts of my book that I'm writing at the moment, so I'm on the project right now. There is an editor working on it, and at the beginning, you only get one hit with the reader, and I want the hit to be me. I want it to be like kind of looking a bit inside me and the soul and all that. But then, of course, you can go way too far, way too flowery, and you lose the reader.
Yeah.
You know, it's a tough one, isn't it? You know, but
that's why the editor's important.
I understand.
To have a relationship with the editor.
Yeah. So long as they don't pour too much cold water on it, and then it's not you, is it?
Yeah, that's the balancing act.
I had that with a piece of fiction that I'd written, and I sent it through to an editor who said, "Oh yeah, I'd be very interested in the whole of this story idea." And they sent back edits, and the first page was just wall-to-wall red ink saying, "Well, this part's wrong, this part needs changing, that part needs changing." And I just got back to them saying, "Look, clearly you were after a different story than the one I've written. Let's stop troubling one another with our unwanted opinions." But yeah, I suppose it's all about knowing audience, which is why when I put my poetry anthology together, the first thing I wanted to do was make sure that there was something hard-hitting and vulgar in the first poem, just so that people knew that's what they could expect from the rest of it as well. So that if somebody's sort of like reading that thinking, well, this is absolutely vulgar and shite and I don't want to read any more of it, in that case, do you know what? You've only wasted one page there. Whereas if I'd started it off with something gentle and tried easing people into it, in that case, by the time they get onto something where I'm talking about German porn and, bestiality, in that case, by that point, people would be sort of like, you've led somebody in there and you've upset them, and you don't want to upset audiences.
No, it's like you say, know your audience.
Yeah.
But we all want to write something. And when you go back to your university course, which we were just talking about, and you had to write it in a more, what was the style that you called it?
Academic.
It's the academic style, that's the essays.
Yeah. You know, I would always be, of course, and this is me on the outside looking in, I would always be aware that because you want to write something in that style, but you want it to be your style, which is absolutely brand new because there's only one you.
Yeah, well, that's where the creative writing stuff comes in. I mean, we got the chance to write a pantomime, and so as
You didn't.
I know you didn't.
I thought that kind of humour was behind you now. Right? But where we got to write that, and we get to talk about it. So the actual creative writing. In fact, actually, I'll do the story because I've written the detective story, the murder mystery story. So the murder mystery story is completely what I want. It's written straight as my voice, and that's what I want to do. But then I've done an analysing of it, and I have to analyse it not from me. I have to be objective about that. Now, when I'm being objective, that's where that has to be more academic. So I have to look at that. I have to use the correct language for the theories that are being used. And that allows me to sit on top of everything. And that's the bit where you sit there and go, oh my God, because I've been doing this metafiction essay about what was going on in it. And you suddenly realize you're writing stuff that you didn't even know you were doing within it. And it's really clever stuff, and these layers and layers. And I know as I write it, I know I'm putting layers on. But when you actually have these theories to back it up, what you're doing, you can suddenly almost go, oh my God, I'm a clever ass. I didn't realize how clever I was, because you're working so intuitively. And metaphors are a classic for that, because, we use metaphors as a natural way of communication. So when you put them into your writing and you suddenly start analyzing it and you suddenly realize they're there, you've got to tell someone very cold about that, because you're not, it's an essay at that point. So that's the division. Is when writing an essay and analysing someone else's work or your own work, of not putting your own personality too much on it, because it's an analysing at that point. And to create that divide, to be able to split the way that you do that, that's been really hard, because I was writing essays like I was writing fiction. So I was using almost similes to describe something that's a theory, and it's not. It's the academic side of things. That's the point of the degree. Once I've got the degree, I'm not writing those essays anymore.
PhD in your master's.
That was the next question.
On my master's, on my PhD, yeah.
That was exactly my next question. So you get your PhD, and you've learned all these words for what's going through your different levels.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what happens then? Do you just throw it all away and think, okay?
Well, no. My plan is I want to go into script writing. I'm going to do once I've got the degree, I can become a qualified teacher.
That's not what you do. What does a student do?
Well, that's what they do. You're either going to go and there's what is it? Avenue Q, isn't it? The musical Avenue Q, which is an amazing music. I don't like musicals, but I really like that one. And that's got a song. What are you going to do with a BA in English?
Yeah, what is my life going to be? I can't pay the bills yet because I've got no skills yet.
Yeah, you pretty much come out with a BA, and you're either going to be a teacher or you're going to attempt to get a job as a writer, and then end up being a teacher. That seems to be the what happens with these kind of degrees.
Right, Sean, it does an awful lot of good. What I've found is that my writing has sort of like improved. So what I was producing before, I can sort of like now write more efficiently, because I understand the structure of narrative more simply. So I'm not there sort of like thinking, what are these characters going to do? I know what they're going to do. There's no maybe they're going to do this.
There's a lot of that.
This way. How am I going to sort of like convey this? Well, I know that I can sort of like bring
structure.
Yeah, so I feel far more confident in my ability to convey narrative. I like academic writing as well, because the point of academic writing is to write with precision. So if I put something in a piece of academic writing, you read it, you get exactly what I mean. There's no point where you're there thinking, well, I wonder what the chuffy's on about, or, oh, well, it could mean this, or it's all very, very explicit. There's no chance for ambiguity in there whatsoever. It also means that critical thinking skills have been sort of like developed. So if I'm reading things, and I know you sort of like pick up a copy of the Daily Mail, you already know that it's sort of like telling you how good the Tories are, how shit Labour are, and all of the rest of this. But when you sort of like read a newspaper and you've got this insight into the way language is used, you realise how the media are trying to manipulate you. And yet we all know the media are trying to manipulate you. But if you're able to sort of like say, well, look at that, you've got sort of like similes thrown in there where they're comparing migrants to vermin, or they're comparing migrants to a disease, and you've got these whole things, you're able to sort of like articulate how these things, and I don't know, it puts you in a stronger position. It's probably not the best position to be in. Chances are most of our students end up on antidepressants because they realise all this shit. It's now got evidence to support it. Wiser if nothing else.
Yeah, I guess the best position, and it doesn't happen often, would be somebody like myself who could do it, and I don't have to make anything out of it at the end. I don't have to turn it into something, you know.
And actually, that there, which I refer to as an audience of 4, or as a friend of mine called it, the fuckist uppist. We have a comedy group called Listen Me Alice, which we literally do just for ourselves. You know, we're not trying to get an audience. If an audience happens, it happens. You know?
But I would say that if you were to enter a course with that that freedom, that you will probably enter the course as a better student because you have that freedom at the end.
Absolutely.
It's not pressure.
One of the things that I always insist on is that it should be about the education, and it should be about the education so that it's benefiting the student and what they actually want out of it. So it's not about employability skills, because fuck employability skills. I've never once worked for an employer who wasn't a twat, if I'm being totally honest. But the degree shouldn't be about teaching people to, this is how you become a good employee for someone. It should be about, this is how you learn how to be a better communicator. This is how you learn, to analyse literature or analyse language. And somebody who's sort of like going in there, not thinking, this is going to get me a job here, or this is going to sort of like get me a career in this direction. Somebody who's thinking, bring it on, let me learn words.
Let me do stuff. Let me do. I don't blow my own trumpet very often, and I've been learning how to do it, to be perfectly honest with you, and actually being on one of the things the degrees taught me how to do is blow my own trumpet in a way. I am a brilliant student, you know, not a grade A student, not the person who sits down and does things to the absolute letter, but I debate without arguing with the, you know, if the tutor says something, it's not about disagreeing with them or agreeing, it's about finding that debate and discussing it to the point when you understand it. And also encouraging everyone around me to do the same thing. So I try and get everybody into the conversation, and because I'm 51 years old and I never ever thought I'd ever be at university. Not that I'd missed the chance. I thought from my background it was never going to happen. You know, that's the way it was for me. So I'm dead excited to be in this position and just
the passion comes through. You know, I think for you it's 24/7, and you can't get better than that from a student.
No,
you know.
No,
in the first instance, and then you got to build on that.
Yeah, and it's going beyond. It's like, say, we wrote the pantomime, we wrote other things. I'm encouraging people to do other things. We get the comedy thing going. We've got the poetry night going on. This was all stuff I was kind of doing before lockdown and before university degrees. But now I feel that I have so much more. Authority is not the right word. I'm trying to think of the word. I feel like I am in a much better position to be able to encourage others to fulfill their potential as writers.
Yeah. And that's particularly what I was talking about, because if you need something at the other end, you're not going to go into it with as much freedom.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I have no pressure on what I'm coming out the end of it with. You know.
Absolutely. So you've got more freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So it's an interesting subject.
Yeah.
It is, it's fascinating. And we really left that fucking story a long way behind.
What is it about this? I think the thing is about that story is you couldn't really slag it off because it was written so well, but it wasn't actually interesting enough to really form a brilliant conversation about it. I think that's the problem, wasn't it?
It'd get an A, but it won't get an A star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even an A minus, you know, because he missed that trick at the end. Yeah,
true. An A minus. Yeah.
Oh, now I know. Now I know you get extra marks for the twist. I'm going off to rewrite my story.
Yeah.
Right. So next week, what are we reading next week? We've had a request, Sean, to read somebody's work.
Yeah.
And not an old writer.
Somebody Who's Alive, a guy called Brian Feller, lovely bloke. He's written a short story called Through the Woods that was been published by Page Turner magazine. I'll share the link for Page Turner magazine. It's a short story, but it's beautifully written. Yeah, and I thought it would be fun to have a
Let's
read.
do it. I mean, we can't say no now, can we? I mean, he's put himself forward, and so let's do it.
Yeah, so I'm all in favour of that. So what was the magazine? It's in Page Turner.
Page Turner magazine, yeah, and I will be sharing the link. Yeah,
and we'll get the link into the comments below here if we can. We've tried sharing links before, and YouTube have a tendency to go, "I'm not being paid for that. You can't share that." But we will do. So we'll say it's Page Turner magazine. And what's his name again, Ash?
Brian Feller, Feller.
There you go. So you search Brian Feller and the name of the story.
Through the Woods.
Brian Feller, Through the Woods, in Page Turner magazine online, pageturner.com, I think it is. Yeah. Search all that and you should find it. And so do, because I know there are some people out there that like to read the stories we're about to discuss, even though sometimes we don't really discuss the stories so much. One of those things.
No, we do discuss it.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, no, we do. I'm only taking the piss because I like to.
No.
But I think it's been a fantastic conversation tonight on all sides. I think it's been really good. So I think we should say goodnight to this one. We've actually the longest one we've done, I think, by the looks of it. So look at that. You need beer, and I need to go and watch.
Come on.
We've been talking about the use of absolute culture and quality stuff and European cinema, so I need to go and watch the new Spider-Man movie. So
okay. Happy Easter, guys.
Happy Easter, and I'll see you guys next week.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Bye now.